Please welcome now to the Imus in the Morning program, a man in the power rotation, the guy who wrote Becoming China's Bitch, American Mojo, Peter Kiernan. Good morning, Mr. Kiernan.
Good morning to you. How are you today?
I'm fine. How did you make your money?
On Wall Street.
I did.
Yeah, I was an investor and subsequent venture capitalist. I invested in small businesses and hopefully made them bigger.
What is a venture philanthropist?
A venture philanthropist is somebody who gives money away and then pays as much attention to how it performs as they would a stock or a bond or any other investment. And you really focus on outcomes and measurements.
Well, that's what we kind of, not probably on your scale, but that's sort of what we do with the Imus Ranch Foundation.
Well, I'm a contributor to that foundation, and I agree. I think it's exactly what you do. And there are an awful lot of charities, 1.6 million of them in the country, which don't measure the outcomes that you do. But when you have something that works, it's great to invest in it. And that's why I think people like your foundation and others that do the same sort of job.
Like we gave $250,000 to tackle a kid's cancer thing, which is associated with the Hackensack Hospital, in which 100% of the money they raise goes toward the program, not to fly around in private jets or pay executives. So,
well, I think you should be commended on that because there are an awful lot of people who give money and don't pay attention to the administrative costs. And I think what you're identifying is a key weakness in many charities. They waste money on things, and rather than getting the kids out of wheelchairs, curing the kids of cancer, et cetera. So my hat's off to you.
Another great organization is Skip. Do you know about Skip?
I don't know Skip.
Oh, man, you ought to check that out. I introduce you to Margaret Minko. They're an organization that takes catastrophically ill children who are in hospital settings on life-sustaining equipment and so on, and they cut through some of the red tape or all of the red tape because it's extraordinarily expensive to keep a kid in that setting and enable these parents to get them home where they can care for them there. Oh, it's a wonderful organization.
It sounds great, and that is the essence of venture philanthropy. You just described it perfectly.
Well, we just gave them $250,000. So anyway, well, how's Trump doing?
You know, I would give him a strong BB+. I think people were worried about his timetable, and I think his process has been pretty doggone thorough. I don't love everybody he's put on, but I think he's generally got some very talented people that he's surrounding himself with, and I think some pretty big decisions still have to be made. But I think, all in all, better than I would have expected, to be honest.
Tell me who you do like.
Listen, I have a lot of regard for Steve Mnuchin. I know his brother Alan. I worked with him for years. They're a family of brilliant and accomplished people. His dad was an amazing talent, an icon on Wall Street. Mnuchin is going to do a great job as Treasury Secretary. Wilbur Ross, a tough, no-nonsense business guy. He's been in the steel business. He'll be great at, can you name the last 5 secretaries of commerce? I think he's going to be a standout, and I think he'll make a big, big difference in this administration. I'll have to say, those are 2, I think, that are standout choices.
How about Ben Carson?
Ben Carson's a cipher to me. He's a very bright and effective guy. You know, HUD is a $32 billion organization with almost 10,000 employees, and the job or the mission of HUD is to get people who need housing into housing and affordable housing, and that involves business, government, and all kinds of regulatory scuffles. I'm not sure I saw him instantly as someone who could do more than be sort of a philosophical leader of that organization. He's going to have to appoint somebody or somebody's men and women who can really drive that mission. I don't see that as his central core strength.
I wonder who's there now.
You know, they have some very talented people there, and Andrew Cuomo. There's some people who've run that who've been very effective. When I think about the powers of observation that Ben Carson has, sometimes he is spot on and really, really intelligent and incisive, and other times I don't know where he's coming from. It's from another planet.
That's kind of goofy, doesn't he?
Well, it's that inconsistency. He is a brilliant guy. And listen, it's not brain surgery, but he is a brain surgeon. I mean, basically, I tip my hat to someone with that kind of intellectual horsepower and accomplishment. I just wonder about the goodness of fit for the job requirement.
I said early on, not important about what I said, but well, maybe it is. when Trump was first began to run, that he had, in spite of the idiotic things he said, which in a private moment he would even admit. But I said that he had the potential, still does, to be a terrific president. Because he's not going to, for example, he may have said that he was going to deport 11 million illegal immigrants, but he's not. Or that he's going to bar all the Muslims. But he's just going to be sensible about it. So do you agree with that or not?
Yes, listen, if you look back on our history, we've had presidents who say outrageous things and wind up being great presidents. I would put Teddy Roosevelt at the head of the class. He was an exasperating campaigner and said all kinds of crazy things, but wound up being a brilliant leader of the American people at that time. I think what you're seeing in terms of the stock market reaction and an awful lot of people now coming around to Trump's way of thinking is a rapprochement, is a coming together. You know, there were times when what Ben Carson said about Trump and vice versa weren't too flattering. Take a look at Mitt Romney. Talk about eating crow. But the point is that there are an awful lot of people who say, you know what, let's give this fellow a chance. Because inside all this outrageous commentary is a core sense of what the American people want.
I don't think he's a racist or a bigot. I know he said things that could be... one could infer that he was, but I don't believe in my heart that he is. Do you?
I don't. Actually, you know, there's things he said that sometimes I was sorry that somebody I was supporting was saying it. But when you distill out the showmanship and get to the core principles, I think what he's going to do is get people to work, restart the economy, and do some things we really need to have done.
I thought it was, who's now in a snit and won't talk to me, even though I voted for him, but I thought these various comments about women, that fight with the Khan family, the comments about John McCain, which I told him about the McCain thing. I thought I said to Trump, a guy who's gotten 4 or 5 deferments as you did, probably shouldn't be dismissing or denigrating a guy who was shot down over Vietnam trying to kill communists. What are you talking about? But even with all of that, I mean, what he's done so far, I think is terrific, you know?
I do. I have to say, my grandmother was a Gold Star mother. I think there are certain people in our nation who ought to be treated with reverence and respect. And anybody with a Gold Star in their family is one of them. So I think you were spot on to confront him. I think he crossed the line on that and a couple other things. I have daughters, you have wives. You know, this notion that you can dump on women and treat them as a second-class citizen is wrong. And I think he owes it to the American people to spend a lot of time redressing those harms that he's created.
And making fun of that Times reporter was one thing, but then lying about it. But, I mean, it could go on about one negative thing after another, then what's the point? My point is that I still wind up voting for him, and I still think he has the potential to be terrific. So
I think so, too, and you have to admire some of the picks he's made. Flynn is not my favorite guy. I don't think he is a guy of balance and a mediator. He's kind of an alienator and a tough guy. And he's in a spot that's basically adjudicating between various people on the cabinet and the agencies. So he's I guess the proof will be in the pudding with him. There's a major choice he's got to make on Secretary of State, and I don't know what you think about the choices, but I think his expanded list is not so bad.
What do you like?
Well, Stavridis is a very, very bright guy.
Oh?
You know, James Stavridis, he's kind of a long shot here. He's interesting because he was also vetted to be Hillary Clinton's vice president nominee. But the point is, he is one of the candidates. John Huntsman, I have a lot of use. He's a Mandarin speaker. And we're seeing sort of Trump's freestyle diplomacy with China. But having someone who has command of the subject matter in China is essential.
Anybody who took the time to learn to speak Mandarin Chinese has got no. Please.
He's an extraordinary talent. And I would say, when you and I were boys, where I think are about 5 years that separate us in age, maybe 6.
Yeah.
When we were boys, the finest minds in the country watched at every twist and turn of the Soviet Union. We had Kissinger, George F. Kennan, we had Brzezinski. Who in this administration today is the genius watching every twist and turn in China? China is potentially our greatest adversary and our greatest economic partner. So who are the geniuses in the Obama administration watching and paying attention to China?
No
Can
one.
you name it? No one. I think Trump would do a great service to our nation if he had someone at the coalface, at the post, who had command of the subject matter as it relates to China.
Well, that's a pretty good point. Pretty good point, Peter. So, may I call you Peter? Or?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
great with me.
Yeah.
It's great with me. I've been called a lot worse. But, no, honestly, I think that he...
Do you like Mitt Romney?
You know, Mitt Romney frustrated the heck out of me. I voted for Mitt Romney. I supported Mitt Romney. I've actually had business dealings in the past with Mitt Romney. He was chairman of Staples, and I was involved in taking them public. So I've known Mitt Romney in many contexts for many years. I thought he was way off the reservation in the speeches that he made and the comments that he made.
Pretty harsh.
And so would he be a great Secretary of State? I think he would be pretty effective. But there's just an awful lot of agita about him inside the Trump team. And I have some friends over there who say, you know, he just built a bridge too far. He said way too much, way too harsh.
I agree.
And so you can't come back. Some things, like Humpty Dumpty, just can't get put back together again. So I think
agree.
he's a long shot.
We're talking Peter Kiernan, who wrote Becoming China's Bitch. Who better to ask, what'd you make of Trump speaking with a little goofball from Taiwan?
Well, you know, it's interesting because it is the freestyle politics and diplomacy that we're going to get from Trump. And I think this is a signal of things to come. And look, we've had this issue with Taiwan where we send the military aid, but we don't, quote unquote, have military, you know, beyond that, have any kind of diplomatic relations. You know, he definitely wants to shake China up. Something in me tightens when I hear how many times President Obama visited France, which was his number one nation, or Germany, which is number two nations in terms of visits. He barely made it to China, but a couple of times. And the truth is, we need to have a renewed dialogue that has a little more teeth, a little more fang than we've had. So Donald was just sending a little shot across the bow. It's interesting, the response from the Chinese has mostly been dumping on Taiwan for being a provocateur. But the truth is, he is signaling a new order of dialogue with China. That's why I think somebody like Huntsman would be a great counterparty, because Trump is really kind of freestyle skiing, and it would be better if he had somebody alongside him who really had command of China. Wilbur Ross, by the way, also does. He's been competing against them for years, and he understands China very well.
You kind of got me on the Huntsman bandwagon this morning.
Well, you know, if I've read his writings, they have all the passion of a second mortgage. So he's not really one of those guys that gets people excited. But in terms of he is co-chair of something called No Labels, so he can reach across the aisle. He would not be a bad choice. I think he'd serve this country very well, as he has already.
All right, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Happy Hanukkah, or whatever you celebrate.
I celebrate Christmas. Are you happy to have your son coming home for Christmas? That'll be great, right? Home from college? Yeah.
Well, he's here now.
Oh, that's great.
Even better.
He goes to school at Rice, but he only goes 2 or 3 days a week, and he's home 3 or 4 days a week.
Yeah, I kind of like
So
to
I
go back
never
to
really
college.
went away. I mean, I was all sad and bummed out when he left, but he's here all the time.
Well, I like to flow back whenever it happens in my house. I'm always grateful to have him in the building.
Oh, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's super.
All right, man. Thank you.
Great to be with you.